My parents always knew how to wound without raising their voices. They could cut clean through bone with soft tones, polite smiles, and sentences wrapped in sugar. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what my mother said that night at dinner. She set her fork down, folded her linen napkin, and looked at me as if she were delivering a weather report. "You're not half the woman your sister is." The room went still. Even the ceiling fan seemed to pause mid-rotation. Something deep in my chest, something I'd been holding together for 29 years, snapped with a quiet, perfect finality. I pushed my chair back slowly, feeling a steadiness rise in me they had never seen before. "Then," I said calmly, "she can start paying all the bills I've been covering for you." My father's jaw actually dropped. My mother's eyebrows twitched her version of panic. They weren't ready. They had no idea how much I'd been carrying. But let me start at the beginning. My name is Elena Ward. I'm 29, and I grew up in a house where praise was rationed like gold. My younger sister, Madison, sparkled her way through childhood. She was loud, brilliant, adored, and somehow always in the center of a spotlight that never dimmed. I didn't begrudge her, not at first. But somewhere around middle school, I realized my parents didn't just admire her, they built their entire identity around her. Every conversation, every holiday, every decision became, what's best for Madison? Meanwhile, I learned how to shrink, to edit myself, to stay out of the way. I left for college quietly, graduated quietly, built a career quietly. What they never bothered to ask was how I managed it. At 23, after Dad's heart scare and Mom's hours being cut, I stepped in silently, covering half the mortgage, paying for repairs, sending money for groceries, prescriptions, even utilities when things got tight. They never asked where the deposits came from. They just thanked Madison for being such a blessing while I wired funds and said nothing. That silence cost me years. I work now as a senior project accountant for a construction firm in Denver, Colorado, a job that pays well, but not well enough to finance 2 households and keep my sanity. Yet I did it, because I believed family was supposed to help family. Until that dinner. Madison breezed in late, glowing as always, flung her designer purse on the sofa, kissed our parents, and took her place at the head of the table she'd unofficially claimed years ago. They asked about her new promotion. They bragged about her new condo. They handed her praise like dessert. Not once had they asked me about my life, my job, my apartment, my goals. Then came the sentence, "You're not half the woman your sister is." And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't swallow it. I stood, calm, grounded, unshakable. "I've paid your mortgage for 6 years," I said. "Madison hasn't contributed a single dollar. If she's the woman you say she is, she can take over tomorrow." Madison blinked. My father turned gray. My mother whispered, "What do you mean, paying?" That's when I reached into my purse, pulled out the folder I'd brought for months but never used, and placed it gently on the table. "Let's talk about everything you never noticed and everything that changes tonight." They didn't hate me. They didn't resent me. They just preferred the louder story. And Madison was loud in every way that counted to them. Still, I kept showing up every Sunday because they insisted. My dad always said, "This family has a seat for you, don't leave it empty." Half joking, half pleading, as if my presence maintained the illusion of harmony they were desperate to preserve. My mom called if I was even 5 minutes late. Family first. She would remind me, though, more and more. It felt like Madison first was the truth carved beneath every word. The dinners were predictable rituals. My mother plated the same roast with herbs she pretended were a family recipe. My father asked the same surface-level questions. Madison delivered the same highlight reel of victories: new clients, new followers, new promotions, new proof that she was the daughter worth admiring. And I pushed food around my plate, pretending the quiet I carried didn't weigh enough to bend the silverware. But the Sunday before everything imploded felt different. My mother kept giving me sharp, assessing glances, the kind she used when she suspected something was out of place. Madison was in an unusually triumphant mood, glowing like someone who had already won a prize she hadn't told anyone about. Even my father's smile looked stretched too thin, as if holding a secret behind his teeth was physically painful. I sensed it then, the gathering storm beneath the polite clatter of cutlery. I just didn't know I'd be the one standing in its path. That Sunday dinner began like all the others, but the air felt heavier, as though the walls themselves were bracing. My mother hovered near the stove longer than usual, stirring the same pot twice, her jaw tight enough to crack enamel. Madison scrolled through her phone wearing a grin so smug it looked rehearsed for an audience. And my father kept clearing his throat the way he does when he's gearing up for a family announcement, something that always, without exception, revolved around Madison's greatness. I'd survived enough Sundays to know when a blow was coming, but I tried to shake it off. I set the table, lined up the silverware, pretended not to notice the tension pooling under every breath. It was easier not to ask questions. When we finally sat down, the conversation like clockwork turned to Madison. "She's presenting at a conference next week," my mom said proudly, practically glowing. They asked her, "Isn't that something?" "She's always been exceptional," my dad added with the kind of smile politicians practice in mirrors. Madison gave a modest shrug she didn't mean. "Well, they know talent when they see it. It's not a cover, Joan." I chewed slowly, swallowing chicken and resentment in equal measure. I'd just spent the entire day at work unraveling a multi-million-dollar payroll error no one else could fix, but that had never once made it to this table. My achievements lived quietly in the corners of my parents' house like dust, like background noise, like something it never occurred to them to notice. Still, I tried to redirect the conversation. "I led a major audit project this week," I began. My director said. My mother waved her hand dismissively. "You're doing fine, Elena, but Madison's work impacts hundreds of people. It's different." The sting was small, sharp, intentional, landing exactly where she wanted it to. I stared down at my plate, reminding myself to breathe. It was just another Sunday, I told myself. Another night of swallowing what I wished I could say. But something in the room told me this one wouldn't end the same. But then my father leaned back, exhaling with a theatrical sigh, the kind he used when preparing to praise Madison again. "Speaking of homes," he began, placing his napkin neatly beside his plate. "Madison helped us sort through some mortgage paperwork last month. She's been such a blessing." A chill crept up my spine. Mortgage paperwork. Blessing. Madison's grin widened as if on cue. "It wasn't a big deal," she said lightly, tucking her hair behind her ear with practiced modesty. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. 3 years of payments pulsed beneath my skin. Payments I made quietly, month after month, without applause, without acknowledgement, because my parents insisted they didn't want anyone worrying, because they said they needed a little help until things stabilized. I sacrificed vacations, graduate school, the down payment for my own home, and now they were giving her the credit. A heat gathered in my chest, slow at first, then rising like floodwater against a door I could no longer keep shut. My mother must have sensed it because she gave me that familiar look, the patronizing tilt of her head, the silent command to stay pleasant, stay small, stay quiet. Then she released the sentence that split something inside me, clean down the center. "You're not half the woman your sister is." The room didn't just go silent. It snapped like a wire pulled too tight. I sat up straighter. I felt the scrape of the chair legs against the hardwood floor. I felt every unspoken word I had swallowed over the last decade clawing its way up my throat. And for the first time in my life at that table, I didn't bury it. I let it rise. My mother spoke the words with such casual certainty that I wondered whether she realized she'd cut her own daughter open at the dinner table. She said it like announcing the weather, like it was a fact I should have accepted long ago. Something in me steadied. Not anger. Not rage. Clarity. I pushed my chair back slowly. The sound sliced through the room like a blade. Madison's smile faltered. My father looked up, startled, as if remembering I was sitting there. My mother folded her hands, waiting for my silence, the one I always offered. "Not tonight." I met her eyes. "Then she can start paying your mortgage." I think. Silence slammed into the room so hard it almost shook the table. My father blinked. "Mortgage? What mortgage?" His voice cracked, almost pleading. I didn't flinch. "The mortgage payments I've been covering for 3 years. 3 pairs of eyes widened at once, shock, denial, and something disturbingly close to fear flickering across their faces. A strange lightness spread through me, like I'd finally put down a weight no one else even knew I carried. My mother recovered first. Elena, don't be dramatic. We never asked you to. You did. My voice stayed calm, steadier than my heartbeat. Every month, just this once. We'll handle next month. Don't let the bank send a notice. I lifted my chin. I have the payments. I have the bills. I have everything. My father's face drained of color. You shouldn't bring that up now, he whispered. It's not appropriate. I leaned forward slightly. It's absolutely appropriate, I said. Because tonight is the first time you've bothered to see me. There it was, the dismissal, the minimization, the familiar attempt to shove the truth back into the shadows where they preferred I live. Something they'd done so effortlessly, so consistently, that for years I thought that darkness was home. I stood fully, hands gripping the back of my chair. What's inappropriate, I said evenly, is pretending Madison saved a home I've spent 3 years paying to keep standing. Aiton. Madison finally opened her mouth. Elena, maybe you misheard. Maybe Mom didn't mean. But I wasn't listening anymore. I watched them scramble, desperate to reframe the story, to mold it into something easier for them to swallow, something where I stayed small, silent, and convenient. And for the first time, I didn't shrink to fit that version. Something inside me clicked, sharp, clean, irreversible. Without another word, I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my coat, and stepped outside into the cold Denver air. My breath trembled as it left my lungs, but it wasn't regret. It was shock, the shock of hearing myself stand up after years of sitting down. That night, back in my apartment, overlooking the quiet city streets, I opened my laptop, scrolled to the automatic monthly mortgage payment, and pressed cancel. A small box popped up. Are you sure? This time I was certain. Canceling the payments should have felt like closure, but instead, it cracked something open. A feeling I hadn't recognized in years. Possibility. For the first time in 3 years, my bank account didn't drain on the 15th, and the silence from my parents? It was loud enough to shake the walls. I started running along the Cherry Creek Trail in the mornings. At first, it was just to stop my hands from shaking. But soon, the rhythm of my feet on pavement became something startlingly close to freedom. I joined a Thursday night cooking class in Capitol Hill. I learned to make fresh ravioli, to chop basil without bruising it, to laugh with people who knew nothing about my family and didn't need to. I let friends drag me on weekend hikes near Golden and Estes Park, where the air felt cleaner, untouched by expectations or judgment. With distance, everything sharpened into focus. Just this month. Every, don't tell anyone. Every time they praised Madison while I drained myself to keep them afloat. And then, the photo. It arrived on a Sunday morning from Mrs. Keaton, our elderly neighbor from my childhood street in Highlands Ranch. She noticed everything. She always had. She texted me a picture of my parents' house. A huge banner stretched across the porch. Congratulations, Madison, for preserving the family home. My entire body went still. Preserving. My throat tightened as the word clawed its way through me. Every late-night transfer. Every sacrifice. Every year I whispered, family comes first, even when it hurt. All of it rewritten, erased. Given to the one person who had contributed nothing but presence and praise. I didn't cry. Not this time. I felt something else, something sharper, steadier, more certain than anger. I walked to my dining table, pulled out the folder where I had stored 3 years of statements, printed bills, wire receipts, proof of everything they refused to see. And I began to organize them, because the next chapter of this story would not be silent. Stay with me, because what I uncovered next changed everything. If you don't want to miss the moment this story finally turns, hit subscribe and come with me into the next part. Date by date. Month by month. What lay in front of me looked less like a stack of bills and more like a quiet autobiography of sacrifice. 3 years of my life reduced to numbers, due dates, and automatic withdrawals. That's when Sarah called, my old coworker from Denver, who had recently moved to Seattle and occasionally checked in on my parents for me. Elena, she whispered, like she was afraid the walls might hear her. I think you should know something. I closed my laptop. What's going on? Your parents are planning a family appreciation dinner next month, in Seattle. My heart thudded once, heavy. And? I asked. though I already felt the dread blooming. They asked me to make the slideshow. I let out a breath. Let me guess it's all about Madison. Silence. Then, softly, it's worse than that. I sat up straighter. Tell me. They want to highlight her as the reason the house was saved. They gave me captions already. She swallowed audibly. They're calling her the anchor of the family, the savior, the hero. Anchor, savior, hero. All words I had earned alone in the quiet but never received. Send me the file, I said. Elena, are you sure? I'm very sure. When the slideshow arrived, I opened it, and a hollow laugh slipped out before I could stop it. There she was, Madison in front of the house, smiling proudly like she had mortgaged her own future to protect it. My parents hugging her on the porch. Captions that read, "Thank you, Madison, for keeping our family home safe. Our daughter, our strength, the one who stood by us." I created a copy of the file, and then I added everything they had erased. After their final slide, I inserted a timeline every payment I had made, displayed month by month. Bar charts of mortgage support. Screenshots of messages from my mother blurred for privacy, but unmistakable in meaning. And for the last slide, I added a photo of the house with the words, "The truth deserves a place too." I saved the edited version on my laptop, on the cloud, and on a USB drive I placed carefully in my bag, where it pulsed like a second heartbeat. Weeks passed. I moved into my new apartment in Seattle, bright, quiet, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. I bought a light gray sofa, a small oak dining table, and a tall bookshelf that made the place feel like a life finally beginning. For the first time, I stepped into a home that belonged entirely to me, not to obligation, not to silence, not to inherited guilt. And then the invitation arrived. A message from my mother, family appreciation dinner, dress nicely, no explanation, no acknowledgement, no apology. When the day came, I didn't go to impress them. I went to finish something. The restaurant in downtown Seattle glowed with soft amber lights. Through the glass, I saw them, my parents, Madison, in an emerald dress, relatives I hadn't seen in years. Everyone dressed like they were attending a ceremony. And in a way they were. I stood in the doorway, unseen, as my father lifted a microphone. "We are here," he said proudly, "to honor our daughter Madison, the one who stepped up during difficult times, who helped us save the home that has been in our family for decades." It's 70s styles. Applause. Smiles. Cameras flashing. The slideshow began. And my heart steadied. The truth was about to walk into the room. Madison on the porch. Madison holding papers she never touched. Madison smiling next to my mother as though she had spent years carrying a weight she'd never even lifted. Caption after caption painted a story that wasn't true, an entire mythology crafted out of convenience, denial, and their favorite ingredient, me staying silent. Then the screen flickered. For a moment, the room thought it was a glitch. Then a bar chart appeared. Another, and then another. Dates. Amounts. The full timeline of payments. 3 years of financial support spread across the screen in unforgiving clarity. Nothing embellished, nothing vague. Nothing they could spin into a cute anecdote for relatives. The room went silent in a way that felt physical, like the air itself recoiled. My parents froze mid-smile. Madison's mouth fell open, the practiced confidence evaporating. That's when I stepped forward into the light. "If the truth makes anyone uncomfortable tonight," I said calmly, "that's not my problem." Every head turned. Dozens of eyes blinking in disbelief. My father looked at me like I was a ghost he never expected to walk into the room, let alone rewrite the story he'd been telling. My mother's expression didn't crumble from shame, no, it twisted from fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing control of the narrative she'd carefully curated. And Madison. Her eyes weren't sorrowful. They were terrified because the crown she'd worn so effortlessly had just been set on fire. I walked toward the screen, my heels clicking steadily against the polished floor. "For 3 years," I said. "I paid the mortgage, not 1 month every month, quietly, consistently. While you," I looked at my parents, "rewrote the story to make it easier for everyone to applaud." "Adium." My father tried to speak. "Elena, take this outside." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. You wanted everyone here to know what Madison did. Why shouldn't they know what I did? Whispers erupted like sparks in dry grass. I knew something was off. She was always working late. 3 years? She paid all that? Madison trembled. I didn't ask them to do this, she whispered. I thought. You thought nothing, I said, not cruelly, just plainly. You enjoyed being the hero in a story that never belonged to you. My mother finally forced out words. Elena, we didn't want to embarrass you. A soft laugh escaped me, surprising even myself. Embarrass me? By telling the truth? The USB drive sat heavy in my pocket, but the truth was already alive on the screen. I didn't need to say more. This wasn't about humiliating them. It was about being seen. For the record, I said, turning to the room. I don't want the house. I don't want praise. I don't want anything from you. I just won't let you erase me again. No one moved. No one breathed. The room stayed frozen long after I stepped away from the screen. My father reached out a shaking hand. Elena, wait. But I didn't. I turned, walked toward the door, and felt lighter with every step. Outside, the cool Seattle night wrapped around me like a clean slate. I stood on the steps, breathing in the sharp air, the city humming below, and realized something profound. This wasn't revenge. It was release. Inside, they could argue, cry, deny, rewrite the story again and again, but it no longer mattered. Because for the first time, I had walked out on my own terms. The truth had finally been spoken, and I had stepped out of the shadow they spent years keeping me in. And once you step into your own light, your real light, you don't go back. You can't. 2 days after the dinner, I was watering a small plant on my balcony when a knock echoed through my apartment. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing close together, looking smaller than I had ever seen them. My mother's eyes were swollen. My father's shoulders were drawn tight, as if the cold Seattle air had carved new lines across both of them. I opened the door without a word. They stepped inside slowly, taking in my apartment like they were entering a life they had never imagined I could build. Sunlight spilled across the floor-to-ceiling windows, the light catching the corners of my bookshelf, my new dining table, the quiet I had created on my own terms. My mother spoke first. Elena, we're sorry. Her voice cracked. We were wrong. We shouldn't have let the story become something it wasn't. My father nodded, eyes low. We shouldn't have asked you to carry so much alone. We talked. And we want your name on the house. He swallowed. You earned it. I let the words settle, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I don't need it, I said softly. I have a home now. My home. What I needed was respect and honesty, not a deed. Silence settled over them. My mother's hands trembled. My father studied the floor like the truth had finally dragged him somewhere unfamiliar, someplace where denial couldn't cushion the fall. I'm not angry anymore, I said, but I'm done disappearing. If we rebuild anything, it has to start from that. Something shifted then. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an opening. A place where breath could move freely, where the old story no longer pressed against our ribs. When they left, the apartment felt even brighter. I walked to the balcony, looking out over the Seattle skyline, realizing I had crossed a line I would never return from. For the first time, the future felt entirely my own. I stood there long after the door closed behind them, watching the city lights blink against the dark. For years, I believed keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. But the truth is, silence doesn't protect you. Silence erases you. Choosing myself didn't break my family. It broke the story that kept me small. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real beginning. If you've ever carried a burden in silence, if you've ever watched someone rewrite your truth, if you've ever fought to reclaim your own story, tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if this chapter resonated with you, hit subscribe. More stories are coming. Stories about finding your voice, standing your ground, and finally rewriting what family really means.